Hello, I'm the Angry Spork. Once again, we're looking at a second team-up between two different properties. And once again, it involves Batman. At this point, I think I could have done an entire year just of Batman crossovers, but setting that aside for now, I'm taking issue with Batman and Spider-Man, published 2 years after their first team-up. This time, they face foes known more for cunning and guile than outright insanity. Again scribed by J.M. DeMatteis, alongside art by Graham Nolan, Carl Kessel, and Gloria Vasquez. Let's see if this comic makes us want to turn the page or turn our heads. The cover has a shot of the city skyline as the two crime fighters drop in, as if closing in on a target. Audience. Many times when the moon is featured in the background of a comic or the cover, it's a lot larger than we see here, so this is admirable restraint. Still larger than it really would be, but hey, that's something, right? The story proper, New Age Dawning, begins with the most chipper of imagery, the aftermath of a devastating earthquake in India, flooding in the Midwest, and bombing in Jerusalem that sparked riots. A televangelist that looks like Pat Robertson did an unholy fusion dance with Christopher Lloyd opines that these are signs of the end times, and only one man can save them. We see there's an outline of a demonic skull in his open palm, the crest of the demon's head, Ra's al Ghul. I know this is really more of a visual cue for the reader so that they know something is up, but I'm just kind of questioning if Ra's would really be okay with one of his minions working in subterfuge, displaying their tattoo like that. It's going to attract the attention of a certain pointy-eared detective that always stands against him. Maybe Ra's kind of wants to rub it in Batman's face on the off chance he sees the broadcast, but on the other hand, I can't help but thinking that Cluemaster, the villain known for intentionally leaving clues to his crimes, is looking at this and thinking, geez, where's the subtlety? We were then taken to a peaceful and uncharted Tibetan village. There's no famine or conflict, and its architect, Ra's al Ghul himself, briefly questions why he continues his longer-than-average life. Then he remembers, oh yeah, I want to wipe out most of the human population on the planet to renew ecological balance. Haven't we all forgotten that at some time? Ra's kneels in prayer before various religious symbols, narration noting how his own version of belief overcomes a whispering doubt that he's just as bad as the evil he's attempting to eradicate. As Talia watches from just outside the room, the narration specifies that he wrestles doubt to the ground, snaps its neck, and spits in its face. Since when has Father's Inner Monologue been written by David Goya? Vanessa Stark is walking the streets of Paris, forlorn and facing a darkness on her own, until the arrival of her husband, the Kingpin. At first seeming frightened by his approach, a portion of a poem by Robert Browning eases them into a kiss. I guess building a criminal empire on deception and murder is okay, so long as you know your 19th century British playwrights. From one married couple to another, Spidey is about to head out on patrol, while Mary Jane, working on a term paper, tells him to be safe. He leaves, returns briefly to give her a loving compliment, and heads off again. Despite the dangers a superhero's life comes with, MJ has learned to trust their love above all to see them through. Wow, I totally see what some people are getting at when they say it's too difficult to write superheroes married. I mean, you got to establish that they're married, the couple loves each other, you got to throw hearts in the panels every so often, they stay faithful and caring. It's just impossible, you see. I guess what I'm getting at here in a very roundabout way is screw everyone who has this mentality, especially those working in the industry and with authoritative powers that dissolve marriages like this based on really bad ideas. I know it was years ago. I don't care. It's still stupid. During his web-swinging, Spidey interrupts a less-than-legal transaction involving a Kingpin goon named De Palma. The crooks open fire, much to their futility, while the wall crawler takes them out and waxes psychological about their supersized boss. After he sees one of the defeated men has a red palm tattoo, we're taken to Gotham City, where Batman narrates the arrival of someone in his neck of the woods, which irks him because if Talia's here, her pappy probably isn't far behind. He barges into a dwelling, sees her in a slinky belly dancer type outfit, and she's elated he got her message. She's in the country on business, but decided to make a stop to make out with her beloved. Then some cowl-blocking assassins pop out of the shadows, but he makes short work of them, even able to expend the energy to wonder what it is about Talia that grasps his heart the way it does. Maybe it's some chance that he can save her from Raisha's ambition, heal her the way Bruce never could heal himself. But enough of that. The henchmen are down, their attack all for show, and Bats wants to know what the big world-devastating plan is this time. Talia just wants a moment where they can forget about conflict and allegiance, but tall Dark Knight and brooding says no, unless she picked him over her dad, but that suggestion is met with her exit via smokescreen, and possibly something else if Batman needed to resort to using a gas mask.
Women. Ask them to choose between their megalomaniacal father and you, and it's suddenly bodyguards attacking this and gas capsules to escape that. Am I right, fellas?
Right on the next page, I guess she's just that serious a businesswoman, Talia is in Manhattan, meeting with Wilson Fisk to discuss their recent and fruitful business association. I guess those guys Spidey beat up never saw jail time because De Palma is present, though not for long, as Kingpin demands privacy, and his goons leave along with Miss Al Ghul's. Maintaining formalities, Talia notes Fisk's effective grip on New York, and how her unidentified employer is much the same, and the time is soon approaching that he will meet the man himself. As Batman listens in, there is an incoming shipment that could take their partnership to a level beyond financial gain, so long as he assures the delivery's safe arrival without knowing what it is. A call seems to disturb Wilson, and he begins to leave, allowing Talia to stay in the guest quarters, revealing that he knows he's been associating with a terrorist group for the last year and a half, but since it seems they want to bring their machinations to his city, he declines protecting their cargo. Talia, however, clarifies that they aren't terrorists. Their goals involve a myriad of things, the last word of which stops Fisk in his tracks. Reclamation, redemption, resurrection.
The 3 R's of Sunday school.
Spidey drops in on Bats' surveillance, having followed Talia from the airport and discovering her partnership with Kingpin on his own, and finding the Dark Knight just as happy-go-lucky as ever.
What we do isn't amusing.
You're dressed up like a bat. I'm dressed up like a spider. And you don't see the humor in that?
I don't find the humor in them. Maybe that's why some of your universe's movies are so intolerable. What was that? Nothing.
Pointy Ears assures he'll take care of the situation, but Spidey doesn't like being brushed aside. Bats twists his hand at the wrist, but it barely hurts because, spider strength. He throws him aside and suggests that instead of an unnecessary back-and-forth brawl or bravado, they pick up where they left off. And they do, sharing a friendly handshake. Meanwhile, Fisk is at his wife's bedside. She's contracted a form of cancer and has become physically weak, but pleads not to go to any more hospitals as she returned to New York for Wilson. No indication of how much time has passed since they met up in France, though. The mob boss and husband attempts comforting words that her sickness is only a setback, but he turns away, biting his knuckle to keep from breaking down.
I really like how this scene uses just enough, not too much, not too little, to demonstrate the pain the Fisks are going through. Kingpin truly cares for his wife, and the visuals accomplish its intended tone with great effect. It's an emotional scene done so well, I can't even make a joke about him mistaking his hand for funnel cake.
As he leaves the room, Fisk is told by a doctor that chemotherapy will only delay the inevitable. His wife is going to die soon. In response, Kingpin straight up kills him, and orders another physician like he would a number 6 special at a local diner. His mood isn't exactly helped when Talia walks into the private quarters uninvited, saying her employer/father can save Vanessa's life. On a splash page, split between 2 people, 2 perspectives, and 2 wallpaper patterns, Ra's al Ghul is described as madman and visionary who wants to subjugate the world and usher in prosperity. How his holy cause to eradicate billions of lives has been thwarted, but not this time, unless it is. Previously trying to impose his will, Ra's now seeks to have the world turn to him willingly, by using chaos to end chaos, in order to establish paradise. Recent disasters described earlier in the story were enacted using an experimental device that manipulates weather patterns and the electromagnetic fields of tectonic plates.
Man, Cobra Commander must really be hurting for cash if he sold the Weather Dominator on eBay.
These plans also include sinking Manhattan with a powerful earthquake. Kingpin laughs for the first time in weeks, believing Talia was serious, but making it clear that a move against his city would be an act of war, regardless of the claims of curing his wife. Then tells her to get out. She obliges, but reminds that he knows how to get in contact with her if he changes his mind. The heroes are swinging across the city, Batman confirming Ra's could absolutely sink the city. Not explained how he deduced that plan, though. And Spidey doubts Fisk would allow that. While he'll join Bats to stop such a catastrophe, he's got other responsibilities to take care of first. Meanwhile, Fisk is again at Vanessa's side while she's sleeping. He goes unmoved for several panels until he turns to the phone on a nearby nightstand and begins dialing. What is this cure?
Under different circumstances, reusing the same panel in a sequence like this could be viewed by some as maybe lazy, but I think it's effective for the mood here. Quiet contemplation of a man typically known for physical strength and influence, powerless against his wife's illness. No dialogue, no narration caption. It's a somber moment captured so much better than in some stories I've read attempting the same thing, or at least similar.
And much like earlier in the book, we go from Vanessa and Kingpin to Peter and Mary Jane. He's a little late for their meetup at his favorite diner, and she can tell something's up. Without getting too detailed, he says his other job is going to be taking him away for a while, but whether he's gone for a few days or weeks, he'll be okay. A brief silence is broken by the televangelist from earlier, now with his tattoo filled in. Maybe it was new at the time, and he had to go back to tattoo artists since then. He's rambling that the world is out of balance, and only one man can save them, lead them back to spiritual equanimity. And he's on his way. Though I don't know if that demon's head emblem is something on the screen with him from the graphics department, or is just there for the reader to see, an effect of the artist, like the background behind Talia and Bats earlier. The same symbol is on the tail of a plane, because that's subtle, on which Fisk, his wife, and his goons fly, including that De Palma guy, much to his nausea, and the two goons with him aren't exactly helping. Vanessa is skeptical of the claims that she can be cured by some mystery man who says he's hundreds of years old, ruling a land that knows no disease. Wilson, having read up on Ra's, notes that herbs sent to them off-panel has given her more energy than she's had in months. When asked what Fisk is giving in return, he gives the never ask about my business line, even though that's what made his wife leave him in the first place. The plane lands, but everyone must disembark immediately so it can immediately take off, to avoid Chinese authorities. Is there a more desolate spot in all the world? You see desolation. I see paradise.
Our Wi-Fi is excellent. The 7-Eleven is open 24 hours a day, and next week is the opening of our new Topper's Pizza.
While Talia's attendants take Mrs. Fisk elsewhere, Wilson and his crew enter a dark room, noting that their host wouldn't betray them lest his U.S. operatives be killed. The room illuminated, the Kingpin is now met by Ra's al Ghul, assuring him they are not enemies. Batman and Spidey, on the other hand, are, revealed to have posed as De Palma's goons this whole time.
Okay, the Mission Impossible face mask trick works well enough for Batman. His mask leaves his lower half of his face open anyway. But Spider-Man? He's already got his spider mask on, so he can't really move the lips realistically. Does he just talk when no one is looking directly at him, or did he convince people that he was practicing ventriloquism? I'm gonna be the next Jeff Dunham, boss. Honest I am. Honest!
Anyway, Ra's figured who they were because of his daughter's love for the detective, wanting to see him, and thus him following her to the demon's head. Kingpin is so infuriated that the costumes would sacrifice his wife's health just to save 8 million people, but Ra's notes they're minor inconveniences, best left to his cronies while they conference elsewhere. We get some fun banter between the two as they take out the henchmen, mostly on Spidey's part, of course, mentioning Bob Hope and Bing Crosby movies and how cute Batman must have been in diapers chasing Kid Joker across the playground. I was never cute.
And I'm certainly not highly attractive as an adult. Someone that woman would find irresistible, like, say, off the top of my head, Bruce Wayne. I mean, that's just crazy talk. Why would you bring that up?
Unfortunately, by the time the fight is finished, their foes have taken a helicopter to Raish's fortress. Without transport of their own, they're taking the scenic route, and a couple of parkas for the cold trek. Later, Talia is having girl talk with a now ambulatory Mrs. Fisk, who thinks she should have stayed in France, dying rather than getting wrapped up in her husband's criminal life again. But she truly loves him, knowing the gentle spirit within the man that has done terrible things. Talia can relate in regards to her father and someone else. Two men she's torn between, and probably wouldn't change how she feels for them, even if she could. Meanwhile, as Wilson goes to town on that boar's leg, Raish explains that he has lived a long time, but each year is burdensome, alleviated only by the hope of one day resting after his vision comes to fruition. Humanity is blind and stupid, Mr. Fisk. The race will destroy itself if not taken in hand, told what to do and how to do it.
Hey, that's not necessarily true. There are... Okay, I'll give you that. But then there are... Yeah, but there's always... Alright, fine. Maybe Raish has a point.
Anyway, Old Man Al Ghul definitely wants to be the one in charge, but thinks Kingpin is the best man to help him, much to the big guy's surprise. On a mountainside, despite help from a map, our heroes have been turned around by a snowstorm. Batman trusts the reliability of the map based on a gut feeling, though it apparently came from a questionable source. They begin climbing. Some people backpack across Europe. Spider-Man backpacks across Tibet. The piggybacking Dark Knight asks if this is necessary, but Parker assures him this is where he excels. You're talking to a guy who sticks to things. I mean, nothing short of an avalanche is gonna knock me in my big mouth.
Wait, I meant the avalanche from Final Fantasy VII. So instead of snow, we'll be met with a bunch of resistance fighters to help us. A ton of snow!
After the avalanche, the two are fortunate enough to have landed near a cave, so Batman gathers his unconscious comrade and takes him inside. Back at the meeting of the egos, Raish explains his logic, how he'll need like-minded men to follow his lead. To become the demon's disciple, Fisk would need to sacrifice his city to control the world. Believing there was no intention of curing his wife, Fisk becomes enraged that he'd been lured around the world for the deluded ends of another. Then Raish reveals that he actually created the virus attacking Vanessa, mimicking cancer, but is totally curable. So Willie wallops him and begins an epic bear hug. Naturally. What kind of man could do such a thing? You? Fisk releases Al Ghul in an "oh yeah, you're right" kind of moment, and accepts his offer. From there, we're thrown into Spider-Man's nightmare, caught in a flood with other people, crying out for his wife, and finding her in the water right before he wakes up. He'd been out a few minutes, but a gut feeling is telling him they need to get moving. In what I safely assume is the main operations room of his evil lair, Raish tells Fisk everything is ready, with politicians, scientists, artists, and leaders all covertly luring people in Al Ghul's direction. All that remains is to punch in the codes to activate the devices that will destroy New York City. Turns out trying to get Kingpin to smuggle them was all part of a test. They didn't really need his help there. The final step is for Fisk himself to enter the code and subsequently doom 8 million people. He's stopped by Spider-Man, and as Raish suspects his daughter of acting against him, has his men fire on the hero and search for the detective. Did it ever occur to you that maybe, just maybe, if you're nice to people, they might let you rule the world?
That is actually a very good question.
With the spider preoccupied, Fisk enters the code and destroys Raish's satellite.
Did you not want me to destroy it? I thought it was weird you wanted me to blow up your $1 million satellite, but I'm a guest in your home. I didn't want to seem rude, so...
Turns out the computer was reprogrammed. Now I wonder who could have done that. He means Batman, right? Or is Vanessa Fisk more tech-savvy than she lets on? In any event, Raish lunges at the Caped Crusader in a sword-toting rage, because of course it's got to be a sword. and the two bicker about how one tricked Talia into helping him, the other is constantly manipulating her to his own ends, but she literally comes between them and says she didn't have anything to do with the sabotage. That was all Wilson, saying he's known for a while with whom he was truly doing business, acquired a dossier on the demon's head on the sly, including information on his base, waiting for the day he'd need to use it against him. When the missus got involved, that's when he willingly reached out to the crime fighters. After taking a moment to consider all of this, Raish laughs.
Oh no, I just remembered something Colin Mockery did on Whose Line Is It Anyway last night. I'm actually quite enraged and will be killing you all right now.
Seriously, Raish is so impressed with Kingpin's planning, he's going to let them all go, even providing safe transport out of the frontier. Bat says it would be suicide to try and arrest Raish, so it's enough for now that he's just stopped his current scheme. As long as Fisk gets a cure for his wife, he'll consider everything square, but Raish tells him there is no cure. The mountain of muscle is stopped in his furious approach only by his sickly wife, so exhausted of the recent insanity that she'd rather face death with her head held high than stay here any longer than necessary. Wilson is reluctant, but agrees. Talia tells Batman she doesn't need rescuing from her father, that she chooses to remain with him like she chooses to love the Dark Knight.
I don't know about that line, though. Choosing to love someone. It's often portrayed as something that happens, a feeling you develop over a variety of reasons. Not quite the same as choosing to live in a certain city or picking what TV show to delete from the DVR.
Fisk turned over some information to the FBI to avoid legal repercussions, so no justice for that innocent doctor he killed, I guess. That data later found its way to Interpol, and after several days, they raided Raish's lair, finding it completely empty. The comic ends with a vial of antidote changing hands, starting with Talia al Ghul until it's given to Fisk to give to Vanessa. But we would see miracles every day, and angels all around us, if we would only open our eyes and look up at the moon about to crash into the earth.
And that was Batman and Spider-Man. I found it as enjoyable as the first one, but maybe for different reasons.
There's a bit more banter between the two main heroes than in their first meeting, and probably because they're more familiar with each other now. It's still done very well, but as with that crossover, the focus seems largely on the villains and their team-up. Whereas Joker and Carnage couldn't get past their creative differences, Raish and Fisk were so alike they were naturally surprising one another. It was like a chess match between two players that don't often face many challenges. How Wilson managed to contact either Batman or Spidey isn't explained, though I don't know how they would have clued you in without really spoiling the big surprise at the end.
I found faith to be something of an element kind of sparse throughout the story, but I don't feel that it paid off in the end. Maybe I'm missing something, but aside from being mentioned at the beginning and the conclusion of the story, and that false preacher working for Raish, I don't really feel like it was as integrated as well as it could have been in a more meaningful fashion.
I suppose you could say that Raish had his own twisted faith, but that's hardly unique to this story. Fisk never really seemed to rely on faith, since he apparently had info on Raish the whole time, and the heroes, the most faith they really exercised was in trusting a map, and even then it seems they happened upon the right cave that led them to the lair. This is a skosh longer than its predecessor, and that may be why it feels a bit better paced. I had no problems with the art, and while the resolution may have felt convenient and less action-packed than one might expect, it remains a solid read. My only real complaint is that it reminded me of two relationships that have since been thrown in the trash in one way or another. Peter and MJ, obviously, but also Bruce and Talia. Before certain retcons were put in place, they had genuine affection for one another, which made their opposing allegiances all the more frustrating and interesting to read. Since then, not only does it seem like Batman never cared for her at all, Talia drugged and violated him in order to get a kid, and in some interactions didn't so much love him but thought of him as a novelty she might put above others.
DeMatteis has some good stuff in here, and writes the villains so well I can't help but hear David Warner's voice when reading Ra's al Ghul. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, watch some Batman the Animated Series, dagnabbit! I'm the Angry Spork, and man have I got issues.